Speaking of interesting perspective, when was the last time that you heard a U.S. official, the Attorney General of the United States, no less, one who happens to be, for the most part, mild-mannered when we've seen him before, come out and call people who live in the United States cowards? Listen to Eric Holder.
Though this nation has proudly thought of itself as a ethnic melting pot, in things racial, we have always been, and we, I believe, continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards.
A nation of cowards. We are joined now by UCLA Professor Mark Sawyer. He is the Director for Race, Ethnicity, and Politics. And we've got Amy Holmes joining us as well, our CNN contributor. My thanks to both of you for being with us. Let us begin with you, Professor. Was it proper for him to use that forum as the AG of the United States to make that statement?
It's proper for in any forum to give straight talk. American social life is still very segregated in some unfortunate ways, and we need to confront it. And you know, a lot of times we don't talk about race in polite company, but it is an issue that we need to take up, and we don't spend enough time together.
Some would wonder, though, Professor, and I certainly don't mean to interrupt, some would wonder what that has to do with his post as Attorney General of the United States, or is there a parallel there?
Well, in some ways, he intends to enforce civil rights laws, but that only gets so far, and I think he's trying to use it to urge us to really think seriously about our day-to-day lives and how we think about race and whether we really interact with and care about one another.
Is he saying, Amy, that the problem is we, as people in this country, tend to self-segregate ourselves, whether you're black or white, and by doing so, we don't achieve the things that we could achieve if we came together more often? Is that what he's saying?
Well, he did say that, but I thought it was a little bit peculiar because I wonder, who is the audience? Who is he talking to? Is he talking to young African-American students who choose to go to historically black colleges, like my brother did? My brother went to Morehouse. Is he talking about Vietnamese Americans that live in ethnic enclaves in lots of major cities where, you know, signs in Vietnamese and DVD shops and restaurants and so forth? So I guess when he says that we're voluntarily self-segregating, he says that's a bad thing. Who's he talking about?
There's something else, and I'm wondering if what he's trying to say has something to do with this. I want to show you something now. Everybody in the country's been talking about this. I was wondering yesterday if it's a story. Obviously it is. This is that New York Post cartoon that many people find extremely offensive. I want you to listen now to what the Reverend Sharpton has to say about this. His group, the National Action Network, marched on the New York Post building today. Here's the Reverend.
This is a very serious affront. This is race-based. This is offensive. To act as though the President of the United States, who is synonymous and personifies that bill, is the equivalent of a shot chimpanzee or monkey, speaks to all of the racial stereotypes and offenses that we've had to deal with historically.
Professor, is the Reverend right?
He's very right. I mean, I like to have a sense of humor, too, but this was tasteless. And we've all seen those pictures in anthropology textbooks that showed, you know, the progression from and the closeness of what people perceive to be a scientific take that African Americans were close to being monkeys.
So anytime you associate an ape with anything having to do with an African American, bad choice, wrong choice.
Very wrong
And you would
choice.
say because of a historical perspective where it's been used in the past.
Yeah, it's been used in the past, and it was even used in this campaign. Everyone saw the Curious George references to President Obama, and people had monkeys with them at the RNC. I mean, this kind of stuff just doesn't help our political discourse.
Amy, do you think that was the intent of this cartoonist, and do you think it's proper for the Reverend Sharpton to be protesting the New York Post?
Well, you would be assuming that this was a depiction of Barack Obama, and I don't think that it was. I think it was everyone knows that this legislation was written by Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, and that it was along almost entirely partisan lines. So when I looked at that cartoon, I thought the cartoonist was referring to politicians in the Democratic Party here in Washington, D.C., who passed a $787 billion stimulus package primarily behind closed doors.
But
did I like the image? No. Did I think that it was tasteful? No. But, you know, cartoons and comedy are supposed to push the envelope. I think the assumption
Look, Amy, pushing the envelope is one thing. But
sure.
the question that's being raised here is, should this guy have known better? You're talking about the very first African-American president of the United States, and whether you're referring to him or not...
Are we talking, but that's the question. Does this cartoon talk about Barack Obama, or does it talk about the Democratic Party and the legislative process? I looked at that cartoon and thought it was talking about the latter. Now, for those people who saw Barack Obama with 2 bullets in his chest, I would wonder why they are drawing this direct linkage between monkeys and the president of the United States. We also know that there was this hugely disturbing, shocking story in Connecticut about this chimpanzee that mauled the neighbor. Those were the connections I was making, not the racist ones.
How about it, Professor?
There's no connection between chimpanzee and the stimulus bill. Everyone knows that the stimulus bill is most associated with the president. And look, I mean, Amy's very interesting, but when you try and defend the indefensible, it just sounds foolish. There's just no connection between these two things.
And this is precisely the reason why so many people do not like having a racial conversation, because if they disagree, they're called foolish or they're called cowards. And we can't have simply a civil conversation about something that affects all of us.
She makes a good point, Professor. If people are a little too sensitive, then it's difficult for one to embark or confront in true racial conversations about how we get along.
Oh, yeah, we need to have a sense of humor, but a monkey with 2 bullets in his chest is just not funny. It's not funny, it's tasteless, and the fact that you know, you have to contort yourself to say, well, it really isn't his bill, it's Nancy Pelosi's, and a whole different sense of things.
I don't see it as a contortion, nor did the cartoonist, nor did the New York Post, who actually ran the cartoon, and that was their explanation for it. But I think leaping to these conclusions that the cartoonist or the newspaper is racist, I think it distracts us. Let's talk about a real story, like the young man who was just shot in his car in his driveway in Bel Air, Texas.
Point well made.
I think to be using our political capital on a cartoon when we have far more pressing racial issues to be addressing is really a waste of time.
Point well made. Professor, my thanks to you for being with us. Amy, as usual, my thanks to you as well.
Thank you.